Hey everyone. Ever wonder if our loved ones, can actually stick around after they're gone?
It's a question that's fascinated people for, well, probably as long as we've been around, right?
Totally. And today we're diving deep into those signs people report experiencing, those little hints that maybe, just maybe, someone's still there.
We're talking about those things that make you go, huh, is that a coincidence or something more?
Exactly. We've got some sources that explore 9 common signs, things like flickering lights, dreams that feel like visits.
Even butterflies as messengers.
Yeah, some pretty wild stuff. So, are you ready to get a little woo-woo with me?
Let's dive in. I'm curious to see what the sources say.
Me too. Let's start with something everyone can relate to. That feeling of a presence, like when you just sense someone's there, even if you can't see them.
Ah, that feeling that sends shivers down your spine.
Yeah, like I remember when my grandma passed away, I was in her garden and it was like this warmth, like she was sitting right beside me on the bench.
Grief and longing are powerful emotions. Our minds seek comfort, especially in places tied to strong memories.
It makes sense, but the sources say that scent is even more powerfully linked to memory than sight or sound.
Oh, absolutely. That's why a familiar smell can trigger such vivid memories, sometimes from years ago. It's like a direct line to those emotional centers in the brain.
So our brains are primed for those scent associations. But what about when it goes beyond just a memory? Like finding a personal item that belonged to a loved one in a place it just shouldn't be.
Hmm, that's where things get interesting. Our minds are always seeking patterns, trying to make sense of the world.
Especially when we're grieving, right? We're
Like,
looking for any little sign, any connection.
exactly. And it's not that these signs aren't real, but our interpretation of them is definitely influenced by our emotional state.
But some stories go beyond just a random penny on the sidewalk. One source tells about a woman who found her late husband's fishing lure tangled in a tree.
Miles from any place he'd ever fished, right?
Yep. And she knew it was his, even though she'd never seen it before.
Stories like that make you wonder, is it just chance? Or is there something else at play?
Makes you think, right? And speaking of things that make you think, let's talk about visions. The sources mention seeing shadows, silhouettes, even full-on apparitions.
Now we're getting into spooky territory.
Right, but it's something that comes up a lot.
Well, we know that intense emotions, especially grief, can trigger hallucinations.
So seeing your grandpa in the doorway could just be your mind playing tricks.
It's possible. But we also have to acknowledge that just because something has a scientific explanation, it doesn't make the experience any less real for the person having it.
True, it's not about proving or disproving, but understanding what's possible. Okay, so we've got scent, found objects, visions, all pretty tangible stuff. But what about those more subtle experiences, like sensing someone's energy or emotions out of the blue?
Ah, now we're talking about those gut feelings, those moments where you just know something, even if you can't explain why.
Exactly. Is there any science to back that up?
Well, mainstream science is still catching up when it comes to things like subtle energy and consciousness.
So maybe science hasn't quite caught up to what people are actually experiencing, like that feeling of your loved one's presence in a specific spot.
Is it residual energy? Or just our own longing manifesting?
Yeah.
Is a question that's hard to answer definitively.
Definitely food for thought.
Hmm.
And speaking of things that are hard to explain, let's talk about animals acting strangely after a death. Dogs whining at nothing, cats staring at empty corners.
Animals are incredibly perceptive, aren't they? They pick up on changes in their environment and in our emotions that we might not even be aware of.
So it could be grief, but just manifesting differently in animals.
Right. But then you have those stories where a horse refuses to enter a specific stall where his owner passed away, things like that.
Okay, now that's creepy. It's like maybe they're sensitive to something we're not.
Some people believe animals can sense spirits or energy fields. It's not scientifically proven, but it adds another layer to the mystery.
It definitely does. We've covered feeling a presence, finding objects, visions, sensing emotions, even animals acting strangely. All potential signs that someone might be trying to connect.
And that brings us to a big one. Communication through dreams. Dreams are fascinating, aren't they? So full of symbolism and hidden meaning.
Oh, absolutely. I once had this dream about my grandmother, and it was so vivid I woke up feeling like I'd actually spent time with her.
It's no surprise that grief and longing show up in our dreams. They offer a window into our subconscious, a place where those emotions can play out.
But the sources talk about more than just seeing the person. They say you can receive actual messages in dreams, things you wouldn't have known otherwise.
There are tons of stories about people getting information in dreams that later turns out to be true. Details about the deceased's life, messages of comfort.
It's almost like our loved ones are using dreams as a way to bypass those physical limitations.
It's a beautiful way to think about it. Dreams are where logic takes a back seat, and we're more open to those intuitive, symbolic messages.
We've delved into some pretty fascinating signs so far, but there's still a lot more to explore. What's up next on our list?
Well, let's talk about those times when people report receiving messages through external sources. Songs on the radio, signs on billboards, even snippets of conversation that feel like they hold a special meaning.
You mean like when a song comes on the radio at the exact moment you're thinking about someone you've lost and it feels like, whoa, that's no coincidence.
Exactly. It plays into this thing called confirmation bias, which is our tendency to look for information that reinforces what we already believe.
So when we're grieving, we're more likely to notice those things that remind us of the person, even if they're happening at the same rate as always.
Right. But even with a scientific explanation, there's still something powerful about those moments when a song, a phrase, a symbol, it just hits you in a way that feels like a direct message.
Like a little cosmic wink from beyond. It's definitely comforting, especially in those early stages of grief when you're feeling so lost.
It's a reminder that even though our loved ones are physically gone, their love and their presence can still be felt in the world around us.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground, feeling a presence, finding objects, visions, sensing emotions, animals acting strangely, messages and dreams, all potential signs that a loved one might be reaching out. But what about those moments of sudden, unexplained emotion or intuitive insight? The kind that seem to come out of nowhere.
That's where things get really interesting. Grief can manifest in all sorts of unexpected ways. Sudden waves of sadness, moments of peace and clarity. It's a roller coaster.
Like you're feeling overwhelmed with grief, and then suddenly this feeling of calm washes over you, almost like someone's whispering, "It's okay, I'm here."
Exactly. While those feelings can often be explained by our own subconscious processing of grief, some people believe they're actually messages or energy transmissions from loved ones on the other side.
Like little emotional care packages from beyond, reminding us they're still there.
I love that imagery. It's about acknowledging that even in death, love continues to flow between us and those we've lost.
We've talked about a lot of different signs, and each one offers a unique perspective on that potential for connection beyond the physical world. But there's still one more to unpack, and it's maybe the most subtle and the most profound. What are your thoughts on those physical manifestations or unexplained phenomena that defy logic? Things moving on their own, lights flickering, those events that make you wonder if there's more to reality than we realize.
Oh, that's definitely one of the most intriguing aspects of this whole exploration. While some of those occurrences can be explained away by environmental factors or just our own heightened awareness, there are accounts that truly make you question everything you thought you knew.
Like those stories about clocks stopping at the exact moment of a loved one's passing, or a favorite song playing on a device that wasn't even turned on.
Those are the stories that send chills down your spine, aren't they? It's like maybe there's this whole other layer of reality operating alongside our own, and sometimes we get these glimpses into it.
Mind-blowing. So how do we approach these accounts? It's tempting to jump to conclusions, but we also don't want to dismiss people's experiences.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it? Keeping an open mind while also considering all possible explanations.
Makes sense. So we've covered all 9 signs from our sources, from the subtle to the seemingly supernatural. It's been a wild ride. What stands out to you most from all of this?
What strikes me most is the sheer diversity of these experiences, and yet that universal thread of wanting to connect with loved ones who've passed. It speaks to how deeply those relationships shape us, even after physical separation.
Absolutely. It makes you realize that death, while a physical ending, doesn't have to mean the end of those relationships. They just transform maybe into a different form, a different realm of existence.
I love that way of looking at it. It's about acknowledging that mystery, that there's still so much we don't know.
Well, this deep dive has been incredibly insightful. And before we wrap up this part, I have a question for you and for our listeners too. If you were to send a sign to a loved one on the other side, what would it be and why? Really think about it. We'll be exploring some listener responses in our next episode, so stay tuned.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what people come up with. It's such a thought-provoking question. It really gets you thinking about the nature of those connections.
So until next time, keep those minds open and those hearts curious. We'll see you back here soon for part 2 of our deep dive into the signs from beyond.
So we're back, diving deeper into those signs from beyond. Last time, remember, we asked you, what sign would you send to a loved one on the other side?
And whoa, your responses. Seriously, so many thoughtful answers. It's clearly something we all think about.
It really is. And reading through them, the care that went into each answer, it's heartwarming. A lot of folks chose things that were like super specific to their relationship, a song, a phrase, something only they would understand.
Yeah. Like one person said they'd send a gentle breeze through their loved one's favorite tree. I mean, how cool is that?
So specific, right? You can practically picture it. It
Mhm.
really shows how personal these connections can be, even just the idea of them.
Totally. But then others went for like more universal symbols. Rainbows were popular, shooting stars, certain birds.
Yeah, those tap into something bigger, right?
Yeah.
Almost like a universal language of signs, which makes you wonder, are some symbols, I don't know, more powerful for crossing that veil than others?
And now that's a thought. Like, are there some that just resonate on a deeper level, maybe a soul level, that we don't consciously understand here?
That's fascinating. It reminds me of those archetypes, those universal symbols that pop up across cultures and time. Maybe there's like an archetypal language of the soul that we're just tapping into.
Whoa. Okay, my mind is officially blown. So we've got these personal signs and universal signs.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on whether they're, I don't know, perceived differently on the other side?
It's a great question. And honestly, all we can do is speculate, right? But maybe it's like, imagine getting a letter, once handwritten, in your loved one's unique script. That's deeply personal. But then there's a beautifully crafted poem, those universal themes of love and loss. That could be just as powerful, right?
That's a perfect analogy. It's not about which is better, it's the heart, the emotion behind it that counts. Which brings up something else a lot of listeners mentioned. The idea of loved ones acting as guides, almost like protectors from the other side.
That belief pops up everywhere, across cultures, history. It's that comforting idea that even though they're physically gone, their love, their care can still reach us.
Like having a guardian angel watching over you. Have you seen that in your research?
Absolutely. It's everywhere. From ancient myths to modern near-death experiences, so many stories of people feeling that nudge to do something, avoid danger, or just make a choice that ends up being, for the best, and they credit it to a loved one stepping in.
It's like that little voice saying, nope, don't go down that street,
Yeah.
or trust your gut on this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while there's always a psychological side, some of these are so specific, so timely, it's hard to just brush them off as coincidence.
True. But how do we tell if it's really them, a message, or just our own intuition? Where's the line?
That's the million-dollar question. And there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
It comes down to, I think, personal discernment, paying attention to those little nudges, those synchronicities, and trusting that inner knowing.
So it's less about trying to decode some message and more about opening up that connection, trusting what feels right.
Exactly. Like building any relationship,
Mm.
right? It takes time, attention, that willingness to listen. Things like meditation, journaling, those can quiet the mental noise and help you be more receptive to those subtle whispers.
So maybe it's not about deciphering a code, but tuning into that frequency of love, that connection that transcends the physical.
I love that because it reminds us that love doesn't just vanish when someone passes.
Yeah.
It shifts, it evolves, but it keeps weaving through our lives in ways we might not always grasp.
This whole conversation has really shifted my thinking about what it means to be connected to someone, even after they're gone. It's not just remembering, it's about feeling their presence in a way that, I don't know, it's comforting, but also kind of empowering.
I agree. It shifts the focus from just grief and loss
Mhm.
to this sense of continuity, realizing those bonds we forge in life, they can extend beyond the physical.
It's powerful stuff. And I know our listeners are feeling that too. We've covered so much, those 9 signs, loved ones as guides. But there's always more to uncover, right?
Oh, absolutely. And to keep exploring, I'd love to hear from you, our listeners. Have you felt a loved one's presence in a way that logic just couldn't explain?
Or maybe you received a message, but it felt like it came from, well, beyond the veil. Share your stories, and we'll continue this deep dive next time, exploring those personal experiences that make this topic so powerful and thought-provoking. Back again for our final deep dive into these signs from beyond. Last time, we asked you to share your own stories, those experiences that hinted at a connection, something more than just the physical world.
And let me tell you, the response was incredible. Reading through them, what really struck me was the raw emotion, the detail. It's clear these weren't just, casual anecdotes. These were deeply personal encounters.
Yeah, it's like everyone carries these little mysteries, these moments that stick with them. And they're not always these big dramatic events. One listener wrote about finding a single white feather right on her pillow the morning after her grandpa passed away. He was a pilot, so.
Wow. Just a feather, but so much meaning packed into it, right?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's so powerful about these signs. They're so individual. It's not about proving anything to anyone else. It's like this private language between two souls. Like another listener, they said they smell their dad's pipe tobacco, but only when they're about to make some big decision, almost like he's there, offering support.
It's amazing how those senses, those smells, they can become this way to access that connection, even if we don't get how it works.
It's like a shortcut to that feeling of closeness, but it's not always about the senses, is it? Some folks talked about just feeling a presence, like a shift in the energy of a room, but nothing specific to see or hear.
Is that intuitive sense,
Yeah.
right? Something beyond words. So one person described it like being underwater, that change in pressure. You just know something's there even if you can't see it.
Like your soul's sixth sense is tingling. It makes those stories about unexplained events even more, I don't know, intriguing. Like one listener, a photo of their grandmother just fell off the wall the exact moment they got news about a family emergency, almost like a warning.
It really blurs the lines, doesn't it, between the mental and the physical world. Is it coincidence, a gut feeling, or something more? It makes you question everything.
Right. And it seems like these experiences often happen when emotions are running high, whether it's joy or grief, like they're amplified somehow. We had people writing in about feeling this wave of peace right in the middle of being super stressed, almost like a loved one sending comfort from afar.
It makes you think about emotions as energy,
Yeah.
that maybe it can transcend the physical. Think about how you can walk into a room and you can just feel the tension, even if nobody said a word. Maybe that resonance can linger or even travel, especially between people who are, deeply connected.
So maybe our loved ones can tap into that, sending a little boost when we need it most, like I don't know, a cosmic hug from beyond.
I love that. And it makes you wonder if we can send those feelings back, even if we don't know if it's being received or not.
Like sending out love and gratitude just in case it finds its way to them.
Exactly. And whether or not science can ever prove it, the fact that so many people have these experiences, it says something, doesn't it? That maybe there's more to life and death than we can fully grasp right now.
This whole deep dive has been amazing, full of mystery and emotion and some seriously mind-bending ideas. We've talked about those 9 common signs, the idea of loved ones as guides, and most importantly, we heard your stories, which really brought this whole conversation to life.
It's been such a privilege to be a part of this, sharing this space with you and with our incredible listeners. The heart and open-mindedness you've all brought to this, it's truly inspiring.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you hope people take away from all this?
I hope people walk away feeling empowered, empowered to trust their own experiences, to keep asking those questions, and to never lose that sense of wonder. The world's full of mysteries, and sometimes it's embracing those mysteries, not fearing them. That opens us up to, the greatest possibilities of all.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the love we share, it goes beyond time and space, and the connections we make in this life, they can echo long after someone's gone. Keep those hearts open, those minds curious, and until next time, may you find peace and comfort in that enduring power of love.